Hello and welcome to the Save Invest Grow podcast from the Morgan Franklin Foundation. It has been a while. This is Steve Spain, and I'm here with Mark Sexton, our Director of Operations. And we got a great podcast here today. We have as our guest our first inaugural scholarship winner. We gave away a scholarship for this fall. Her name is Thais-Estrada Nunez. She is a freshman at Stanford and she has just a really incredible background. She's a first generation citizen of America. Her parents moved here while her mother was 8 months pregnant, coming over from Paraguay. Her father went to school to be a doctor in Paraguay. We learned this during the conversation. It didn't transfer in America, so he worked as a construction worker, and they did whatever they could for 10 years to get by until he could eventually get his credentials transferred over here. But an incredible high school experience. She attended all these great organizations around the country while in school. Her high school was ranked number 3 in the country and just had this really great experience there that set her up to pursue what she really wanted to do in college. And I mean, I think she's going to be doing some really great things. I mean, we might be talking to a future president of the country, Mark. I don't know if you got that impression.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. I totally agree. I think she was one of the most sort of inspirational people I've ever heard speak, and so I think everyone's going to really enjoy this podcast and discussion we had. Very impressive, young woman.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even mention the nonprofit she started. I think she said at 15 years old. Her
Yep.
grandmother was back home during COVID and started this nonprofit because she saw this huge disparity between the healthcare practices in Paraguay and the States. And they started sending resources to the hospital, and then they started sending computers for kids, and just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think she's studying public health studies at Stanford University. So, yeah, this is a very impressive, very impressive person with an amazing background, amazing story.
Yeah, and great way about her too. She's humble and she wants to learn and surround herself with good people. And so, yeah, I think this was a great conversation. So, with that said, I think we should get right to it, huh? Well, hello, Thais. Welcome to the MFF Save Invest Grow podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Now, are you in California still right now?
I am still in California. I am leaving tomorrow, well, tonight, basically, but yes, heading back home.
Okay, and you are finishing your first semester at Stanford.
Yes, I am. Yes, yes,
So, pretty big adjustment. So, your family's in Miami, right?
yes, they are all in Miami. Yes, it definitely was.
Man, so how's it been? Was it an adjustment those first couple weeks? When did you actually move out to California?
Yeah, so we're on the quarter system, so we started like later than most colleges. So we started move-in day for freshmen was September 19th, and we started classes on the 28th. But it was definitely a big adjustment, but I have had a lot of fun and I'm very grateful for every day. I'm incredibly grateful for where I am. And there's been so many things going on, and I feel like it's only been 10 weeks, so like the quarter lasts 10 weeks long, but I feel like I've lived 9 lives through those 10 weeks. And yeah, it was definitely an adjustment, but I would say I didn't feel as homesick as I thought I would, but I think maybe later on when it'll hit on. But yes, it's been an incredible experience for sure.
That's great. So tell me about what the 9 lives were like living out there. So have you had a lot of new people around you, new experiences? What's been the 9 lives?
Well, for sure. I would say, well, so one of like the new people there, everyone has incredible stories, everyone has incredible passions, but even just like on a human to human level, I've had incredible conversations and made incredible relationships that I'm incredibly grateful for. And people are from like diverse areas like across the world, which has been also a big learning point for me. And then even academically, like there's so many niche classes that cater to specifically what I want to do in the future, which is not something that you would find in high school. So that has also been incredibly enriching. And even the professors, like they're all experts in their field. So that has also been like incredible to like learn from. Sometimes I'm surprised that I'm like their student, and it's incredible to like just talk to them and receive advice from them. And then even like clubs and extracurriculars, I myself like have so many interests, so like that's also been something that has been fun to explore, and I've also found new interests that I'm really excited to continue through my time at Stanford. But yeah, it's been a lot of activities going on, like from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, but I'm incredibly grateful and so happy that I'm here.
Well, that's awesome. I don't think you could say a better response for a first semester. So maybe we should send this recording to Stanford, and you can get an advertisement out of that. Maybe we could get some income for you for that.
So
Uh,
yeah.
well, you do have an incredible background. So you are our first scholarship winner. So you are an inaugural MFF financial independence scholarship winner. So Mark and I personally went through all the scholarship applicants ourselves, and we picked you. You have an incredible background. We're really impressed with all the things that you did and are doing. So I thought we'd start with, we learned a lot about you before Stanford, and then we can circle back to your experience there, and particularly interested in what you did with your family back home in Paraguay. That was one really unique thing while we were looking at our scholarship applicants, was the nonprofit that you started. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so basically, the way it started was back in 2021. So this was when the pandemic first hit. So most of my family is like they live in Paraguay. So both my parents, they immigrated to the US, and then they had me. So it was relatively recently. So most of like my family and like my culture is back in Paraguay. So in 2021, when the pandemic hit, my grandmother, she was going through breast cancer. So we would FaceTime a lot, and basically, I knew of like the disparities that existed in Paraguay, being like a third world country, but through FaceTimes and like hearing like how like fearful she was to access the hospitals, and hearing how like there weren't a lot of like medical resources in the hospitals, and like overflowing, like doctors quitting, and like it was really worrisome. And I think that's when I like first hit me like how bad the situation was in Paraguay. So it just started with me like collecting a few donations with my family, and the turnout was actually quite incredible given that it was the pandemic. So we sent those donations to Paraguay to the hospital that she attended. So that's how it started. But after that, we decided to do more donation drives, and soon we got the help. We got help from the Council of Paraguay that's stationed in Miami, and due to his like incredible support, we were able to send more donations, because the thing about Paraguay is that like doing anything with that involves with Paraguay can be very logistically hard, just because it is a third world country and it is very corrupt. So for example, when you're shipping like items, there's a very high chance of it getting stolen through connections, because like there's no like direct flight to Paraguay. You always have to do a layover. So like that's another thing. And even like getting it past the TSA in Paraguay can be very hard. So it was very important to have the support from the Council of Paraguay. So that was an incredible step forward. But from there, like we started like I started recruiting some of my friends, and then they reached out to other friends, and also the Paraguayan community in Paraguay started helping out. So it just started growing by itself. I would say through the mission, because everyone wants to help out in Paraguay. So I feel like once we started this thing where like collectively we were able to like work together, they realized how much more effective that was than just like sending your family member some necessary resources. And then we started working with children's shelters as well. So basically, and also with teen mothers. And we started like doing things at a larger scale and kind of thinking through things at a more sustainable like level. So I had done an internship on like the UN sustainable goals. So I specifically focused on like good health and well-being, gender equality, and then quality education. And through that, I learned like what makes specific movements, nonprofits, and even like private institutions impactful and sustainable in their impact. So like that's like the business part of it, also like the grassroots part of it, and kind of like what makes things sustainable and actually achieving impact, right? So through that, I was able to learn a lot and kind of apply that to my nonprofit. So basically, from there, we decided to host fundraisers. So like these fundraisers were served to like yes gain money, but also to kind of fortify like Paraguayan cultural pride in Miami, and that was a really great thing to do. And so our I think my most proud like accomplishment through our nonprofit was we gathered a lot of some funds to buy and send computers, and those computers were able to start an IT course in a children's shelter and kind of help those mothers gain a source of employability and some skills in order to, you know, fend for themselves in, you know, in a world, in a country where there's not a lot of resources for them to, you know, access quality education or even access skills to be able to be employed. So that has been a great journey. And now that I'm here at Stanford, I've been wanting to learn more about the policy side. And so this quarter, in one of our classes, we were able to conduct a research-based paper, and I focused my paper on health disparities and specifically what policy methods we could implement in Paraguay in order to make the healthcare more efficient, but also how to like target specific vulnerable groups like indigenous mothers, for example. So I'm very excited to continue to see in what ways we can make more sustainable impact and kind of learn on through my journey in Stanford, like what specific policy and economic methods we could implement in Paraguay. And kind of course, I'm just, you know, a teenager in the US, but I think it'd be really great to kind of provide some awareness and hopefully that can help in Paraguay. But yeah.
Yeah, wow. I mean, you started this nonprofit. Were you a freshman or sophomore in high school at the time
I
when you were?
was I was a sophomore. Yeah.
Well, I mean, all the wise old age of where you're 15 or 16 years old as a sophomore in high school. I mean, it's a really noble effort, and I think it's so cool that it came out of it was your grandmother. You know, you were seeing it first there, and it kind of grew from that. So, and it sounds to me like this would you say that your major in college, seems directly attributed from this experience?
For sure. And I think that like going into Stanford, I was very like passionate about learning the policy side, but being here at Stanford where it's very like concentrated, well, it is like it excels a lot in like the social sciences and the humanities, but it also like is very known for like the CS part and the tech side of like its innovations. So like through that, that's also opened doors for me. For example, I just finished like an AI in healthcare seminar class. So like through that, I was able to learn a lot about like the how AI can be used to like kind of bridge health disparities in particularly vulnerable areas for like so for example like dermatology is like the area of medicine that has the most disparities worldwide just because like it's a very niche part of medicine that's not very easily accessible to most areas. So like kind of seeing basically they brought in like kind of startup founders that use AI to bridge health disparities. Like that has been very impactful and also like a new lens to kind of think about like the health disparities in Paraguay in a new lens and what other type of solutions we can use. So what I'm studying, like the specific major, I'm still undecided just because I feel like there's so many aspects. Like there's the technical side and then the policy side to help in healthcare. So I'm still maybe I'll combine the two, but we'll see. Yeah.
Hmm.
But definitely geared towards healthcare.
Yeah, no, I could see a lot of different outcomes coming from that. I remember this article, it was written in 2013, and it was basically studying the lack of regulation for healthcare costs in America. And you probably have come across something like this or even read the article, but just the massive amount of, the discrepancy between the actual cost for something like chapstick. And they charge you, $40 or $50 on your bill at the hospital. And, these third-party companies that come in for someone who has a routine and they might have heart palpitations, but then they get stuck with a $150,000 bill. And there's these third-party companies that come in to kind of fight those bills down on behalf of client, people who came in just for a routine type thing. And that's just America. I mean, I can only imagine. I mean, what are you seeing, I guess, as a contrast between America and Paraguay? Are there are big differences in terms of like the insurance coverage? Is there, it sounds like just general availability of medical, either doctors or people who are close to be able to provide service. I mean, are there massive differences that we're not even aware of?
For sure, there are massive differences. So it's all based on the infrastructure. So Paraguay's infrastructure is very weak, for example. And a lot of the healthcare, so I think like 70% of the population relies on like the Ministry of Health. So like that's like the public, like that's the like the public health insurance. And like the other 30%, which is like the more like affluent part of Paraguay, they have like, private insurance and private healthcare. So like they're fine. But like with the Ministry of Health, there's a lot of disparities and a lot of inefficiencies when it comes to accessing healthcare and also quality primary care. So like that was another thing that I found in my research was like while like Paraguay has ambitious goals in terms of like improving like their healthcare outcomes. So like that you can see like in the past like 2 decades they've been increasing in government spending. However, they are not they're not improving in actual primary healthcare quality, and specifically when it comes to studying like particularly more, like vulnerable groups like indigenous groups, you can see like there's not a lot of improvements. Like yes, like there has been an increase in private and government spending in healthcare, but that has not matched actual improvement in health disparities, for example. And a lot of that is also rooted in other like forms of like systemic inequality. So for example, like there's a big culture of machismo, for example, in when it comes to indigenous groups. So like a lot of mothers are like indigenous mothers specifically, they're often displaced from their land. And indigenous people like they live off the land, and like that's a big part of the culture. So once they're displaced, you can see like even like when I was younger, when I would like visit Paraguay, along the streets there's always people, when you stop at the red light, there's always like you can see like indigenous mothers with their babies in their arms, and they're selling some sort of product because they need that. And they're sleeping on the streets because they don't have access to their prior indigenous land, and they also like don't they're often illiterate, they have like no access to internet. And so you're kind of left with this there's limited, very, very limited opportunities. And so when you don't have quality healthcare and you don't have like quality education and you don't have quality access to like to state sponsored resources for those groups, it's very hard to like kind of in the US, for example, like education is a very big catalyst for like social change, and it provides a lot of opportunity where you can dream of becoming anything, and you can likely become anything because of like the plethora of opportunities that are available in the US. But that's not possible in Paraguay. You can't like dream big if you're that like you're not born in the affluent part of Paraguay. So that's something that I'm really working toward. I really hope to work towards in the future as well, and continue working towards. But yeah.
Wow, no, that's it sounds like there's some what came to mind as you're describing this, the 70% of the country has this basically government sponsored healthcare
Mhm.
program. It sounds, you hear about veterans in America. Sometimes, that it's a nationally funded healthcare program for veterans that, they'll not have coverage for certain things, and whether they were exposed. I remember reading this thing about people in Iraq or Afghanistan being exposed to certain things they breathe in, and the coverage not being there to cover them. So it's kind of a tough thing when you don't have competition. It's like going to the DMV. There's no one pushing the DMV to have better computer systems and to be more efficient to compete with another DMV service, right? It's just funded. This is what it is, take it or leave it. And, we have this much funded that we can help you with, or we don't have anything, right?
hmm Yeah, that's a very big thing that I've like become very interested in like learning more about since I got here, because I am in some like business clubs, but I'm also on a cybersecurity policy team. So like through that, I've been able to like kind of see like the inefficiencies that come with like national and states like governments sponsored like resources. So like you said, like the DMV, and like how inefficient it can be. And I'm really interested in learning like how, because like things become efficient through competition, like you said. Like so private companies are always like competing against each other to like have the best product on the market and have the lowest price as well. It's like, what do you do when you have a government sponsored resource? Like yes, government sponsored resources are important for like vulnerable groups, but oftentimes like in Paraguay, where most of the country is vulnerable, like how do you like build a culture of competition within the government in order to like make them more accessible and better quality as well. So that is something I'm really interested in learning more about.
Absolutely. And it sounds to me like you're well on the path and already thinking that way. Um, I'd still would like to go back to some of your origin story here, because I feel like you have so much. I mean, your parents were they moved here, you said, slightly before you were born. Was your mother already expecting you before they moved to the States?
Yeah, so the thing about my parents is that they have like their own stories, incredible. Like I like respect my parents so much and they've influenced so much of like what I do today. So my mom, she was born in New York, but she had moved back and forth between New York and Paraguay just because of family situations, and so she's had like a lot of struggles in her life, and then she met my dad, and my dad actually he was studying, he would like came from a very humble, like impoverished family in Capiatá, which is like a rural part of Paraguay. So, but he had dreams of becoming a doctor, right? So he would, he would clean houses at dawn in order to get, enough funds to access tutors because, of course, public education in Paraguay is not great at all. So he was able to get a full scholarship to medical school in Paraguay. And so, like, that's where they met. And then, so they both met and then they moved to the States because they thought it was kind of like really last minute. My mom was actually like 8 months pregnant when she got on the plane because she
Wow.
realized, yeah, she realized that it's very important for me to be born in the US just because like, like the different opportunities that come with being a US citizen and all the things that I don't, being a US citizen is like an incredible privilege. So, so she came, and then my dad came a few months after once he was able to like figure out like the logistics part of it. And then from there on, it was quite a struggle because it was just them two. My dad did not speak English, and his medical degree did not like transfer it like directly in the US. Like it's not something that's like like he can just become a full-fledged doctor in the US. So he had to learn English. So while he was doing that, he was working as a construction worker. And then my mom, she would teach English at night because she wanted to like care for me during the day. So it was just a balancing act between like kind of like pursuing their dreams of like establishing themselves in the US while like caring for me. And so I think, and then I had two other siblings through this journey. By the time I was 10 is when my dad finally was able to start his residency in the US. So like a whole decade later, right? And my and so he finished his residency and then we moved to Miami. So like that's it basically they accomplished their American dream, but it was definitely through a lot of struggle and a lot of hope and faith in like, the American dream and like kind of pursuing their passions as well. But yeah, so like they definitely inspire me a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I can only admit what a great story. And I mean, persistence and perseverance, but also humility. I mean, here's your father who has this medical background and he's doing construction work to get you guys to get by. That's pretty incredible. And I'm glad to hear even after a decade, he's back to the his chosen field of work. So that's pretty incredible. I've met one other younger guy from Paraguay a few years ago, and I was always so impressed by him. He was only about 23 or 24, and it just really made me reflect on the American dream and how we take it for granted. He was I think he might have been all but 24, maybe 25 years old, and he came over, I think, in his late teenage years. I think his parents came over a little younger. He started working in construction like your dad did, and in that time, he basically spun off and started his own drywall construction company. And the reason I was seeing him is I worked for a law office. I did real estate closings, and every time I saw him, he was buying another investment property. And at the time, I think he had bought his third or fourth multifamily house and he was 24 or 25 years old. And he and his new wife were expecting their first child. And it just really caused me to reflect like, here's this younger guy who just came in, saw the opportunity here. And I just think it takes that perspective of being outside the country and having that lack of opportunity that once you see it, you just work hard, keep your head down, and great things happen. So, um, both for your family and just the only other person I could think of off the top of my head that I know came from Paraguay and had great success like this. It's pretty incredible.
Yes. And actually, like Paraguay is such a small country. Like I never expect like when I enter like other space, like for example, when I got to Stanford, like I did not expect to meet anyone from Paraguay just because like there's such limited resources to like achieve like, you know, like bigger things within like your passion. So I'm very grateful for my parents that like they very much impressed like the importance of education and like following that career, that path. And so when I got here, actually, there was actually another Paraguayan. So I was very, very surprised because he actually he just like he lives in Paraguay. So like that was even more surprising. And he's not like part of like the affluent part of Paraguay, because like that's what you kind of assume if you find like someone in Paraguay, someone in the US from Paraguay. So it was actually quite incredible to be able to speak to him and kind of learn from him as well from that perspective. But back to your like point about the American dream. So like in high school, like I still am like very involved in like advocacy, but also like national like education policy and all those things. So I think it was like very important for me, like to have that perspective of being incredibly grateful for all that the US offers and all that the US has offered opportunities for my family as well. And I could not like accomplish all these things in any other country, for example, but also like having like that lens that we can also like do better as well and kind of providing that perspective as well. So that's been an incredible perspective that I've been able to take on because of like you know, being the daughter of my parents as well, and kind of having like my own journey as well through the resources that the US offers.
Yeah, and it seemed like you had a really great high school experience, the school for advanced studies, and was it in Miami that you, it looked like they have a few different campuses.
Yes, so School for Advanced Studies is it's pretty nationally recognized. I think it's like number 4 in the country,
Looks
something
like
like
number 3 on the website. They've gone
oh,
up one.
number 3. Wow. Yeah. They're pretty great. So we have like 5 campuses in Miami, and I attended Wolfson campus, which is like in the downtown area of Miami. But I am so incredibly grateful for that school because so for example, like my school counselor, like I mentioned earlier, Miss Martinez. So our school is only like so my campus, it's only junior and senior years, right? So my graduating class of like the senior year only had 56 kids in our
Wow.
campus. So that alone provided so much opportunity for me to like have direct access to my teachers and my counselor. My counselor's constantly sending opportunities and constantly checking up on us, specifically when it pertains to college applications. And I think that that has been an incredible like support system. So like I myself like was like very ambitious in terms of like the goals I wanted for myself for the future. And that like having being able to access like my counselor and my teachers was also a very pivotal step and like foundational support for like accomplishing my goals. But another key part of it was that we have received everyone that graduates from SAS. Well, most people like the trajectory is that you graduate with your associate's degree as well. So like half the day we would have our classes at Miami-Dade College, it was like the local community colleges, and then the rest of the half we would have classes at in our high school. So that was an incredible opportunity to be able to take classes that like were above like the rigor, like continue to like, for example, like chemistry, like I continued doing chemistry at like at a higher level, for example, and having like more niche classes and even like having like college students be your classmates was an incredible opportunity to learn from. And it was a really great experience. And I'm very grateful for the support from the school. And it is a public school, which I think like even from like an education policy standpoint, it is a very innovative approach to education and in kind of like bridging like education disparities in Miami specifically. So
Yeah, that's great. That's seems like a way more efficient use of your time coming out with an associate's degree and putting yourself in a different culture and environment with older students who are paying money to take courses there that you're getting as a, as a public school is pretty incredible. And you were a part of a bunch of different organizations while you were there. Were there any that were most interesting to you and maybe prepared you more for life after high school?
do you mean school-based or outside of school?
Well, I mean, you have a resume full of so many different things, so I don't know what you did through the school and what not, but you were a part of so many different things. So maybe tell us about one that you did in the school and one that you did outside the school, because you did a lot of amazing things.
hmm Well, one of the things I would say, so I found about this organization through like one of like the school counselors. But it was called is this was like the outside school one, but it's called Citizen University, and basically it's a nonprofit founded by Eric Liu, and he like focuses on changing civic culture within the US. So basically, you apply, and then they select 20 youth like change makers across the US. So they tried to like make it from diverse like geographical areas. Like I was one of two students selected from Florida, for example. And basically what this was it was a year-long intensive program. So on kind of learning about like civic culture within the US, how to change it and how to create our own projects and kind of have a sustainable impact within our own local communities. So basically there was three intensives that we attended across three cities. It was in DC, Seattle, and LA. So they were so basically these conferences, they recruited a lot of like national civic change makers. And so these were like CEOs of nonprofits, government leaders, principals, school educators, so people across the spectrum of like they had different investments in our civic culture, and we were able to sit at the table directly with them and kind of collaborate and innovate with them to kind of learn about our civic culture. But I think that that program specifically has led me to a lot of like networks in terms of like the people, the peers that I'm still in touch with to this day. We always celebrate our accomplishments with each other, and we will have very like similar passions and interests in terms of committing to public service in the future as well. But that has also taught me a lot of valuable skills, like how to talk to, you know, adults who have like, you know, not being afraid to like ask for like collaborations with adults, even though, you know, we're just teenagers, and kind of like that project ideation. So I focused on, for example, one of the things was well, like I combined it with provisions for Paraguay. So it was really great to be able to kind of hone those skills as well. And that program specifically like led me down a route of like education policy. So like through the Reagan Summit on summit on education. So I was able to speak on a panel on youth voter turnout in Miami and like kind of like the factors that go into that. So that was like an incredible experience. It's because even the SCOTUS justices like attended that summit. So like that's like, you know, that I would say that was an incredible platform to be able to introduce me to a lot of other opportunities. And yeah, it's specifically introducing me to a new passion of education policy as well. And then within school, I am very grateful for like a lot of the clubs, like Women of Tomorrow and Medical Club, that I was able to like take leadership positions on as well. And specifically, like, the way SAS is structured is that we have our college classes in the morning until 11:20, and then high school classes from 11:20 to 2:20. So in the morning sessions, you would basically you're independent. So you have to like take initiative on, you know, getting to class, but also there's also like an allotted free time because in the morning, so before 11:20. So that free time I often like dedicated to like extracurriculars, like making sure that, for example, like internships I would do during the school. So one specific internship I did like, through school was I worked with like a school board member, Luisa Santos. So basically reading like policy items and kind of annotating them and providing like my view as a student and before she presented to committee. So like that was an incredible um, um, program and experience I did. So I'm incredibly grateful for all these opportunities that have helped me grow and kind of grow new passions as well, that now I'm here continuing at Stanford.
Wow, that's I mean, we read about these and it just seemed very interesting. Some of these groups and activities you're part of, and I mean, working directly with, you know, big intimidating adults to making policies and such, right? As a high school student, it's pretty amazing. Now, did you do were there a mix of like Zoom meetings, or did you actually travel out to DC or Seattle for some of these groups you're part of?
Yeah, so that was, I think, a very big part. A lot of these programs funded, so they like funded like the hotels, the planes, everything. So that was an incredible experience, like be able to travel to all these places I've never been to, but also like see these like people in person. That was a very big part of it, I think, of the experience. So I did go to DC, LA, and Seattle, and then I also went to DC. I went to the Reagan Summit, Institute on Education. So like the actual Reagan Institute is like right in front of the White House. It's like across the street. So like that was an incredible opportunity. I mean, like I'm so grateful for. So a lot of these programs I was able to travel with, and you know, that came with such great privilege and opportunity. And so yeah, that was a very big thing. I got to, you know, travel quite a bit, like especially my last 2 years in high school.
Wow, it's great that they set their days up and really prioritize you making time for organizations like that in the middle
Mhm.
of your school day.
Yes, yes. And they're also very like they understand the importance of extracurriculars and kind of the importance, yes, of academics. It is a very academically rigorous school, but also they also value extracurriculars and kind of being involved in your community and and kind of enhancing your impact as a high school student. So they worked with me in terms of some of these like trips would happen. I would have to like miss school, for example. So I would work directly with teachers in order to like make up work or kind of like Zoom calls. So it was very flexible in that sense too. So I'm very grateful for that too.
Wow, no, that's really exciting. You got to take part in all that travel and such. Even just doing that, I mean, it can get people out of their comfort zone to travel, and go meet with people that you don't know, and to be able to adjust to that. So, what great real world experience for you in high school before even starting your career. That must have been really exciting.
Yes, it definitely was. And it has pushed me to, take initiative to apply to as many opportunities as I can. Like I'm in spring break for Stanford, they have like this program called Alternative Spring Break program, right? So
Hmm.
basically during spring break, they fund a service program. So I'm specifically going to go to New York and we're going to explore education inequality policies. So talk to big stakeholders in education policy in New York just because New York has a very unique education system with in high schools, like they're based off the specialized high school system. So like students starting in eighth grade apply to high school and it's a very rigorous process. So kind of exploring that. I think we're gonna also visit Common App, which is like the holder of like the SAT, AP exams and all those things, and also kind of exploring the gaps in education quality in New York as well. So I think that all those like programs and opportunities in high school definitely gave me the confidence to be able to pursue other things now as well. Mhm.
That's great. I mean, you definitely don't seem to have any fear of jumping in. It seems like you're definitely interested in putting yourself out there, taking some risk, and putting yourself in an environment where you're surrounding yourself with good people. Um, what do you think the end goal of all this is? Do you see yourself in politics or leading? I mean, I could picture you continuing to lead your nonprofit, and that could be satisfying to you. You could start another organization, you could get a, government position or lead a company. Do you have any of those thoughts bouncing in your mind right now?
I every day I'm like, I don't know what guys, I want to do so many things with my life and I know I can't do everything, but I want to study so many things as well. Like every day I'm thinking of a new major or like something that will like help me in like my future passions. I know my future like end goal, like what I want to do in the future in terms of the impact I want to have. So that is like helping in Paraguay with like health disparities. But in what way I want to do that, I'm still figuring it out. So maybe I do see myself as a policymaker. So I think that that's definitely one route, but also like the technical side of it, kind of exploring the side of AI and healthcare and kind of exploring that part is also a very real possibility. But I do definitely think that the work with my nonprofit is going to be something lifelong. So that's definitely going to be something I'm going to be working on, like, for the rest of my life. And I think it's also going to be something that becomes a very like family oriented thing as well. So it'll like hopefully my siblings like they help out too and kind of like help this initiative as well. And so I'm not exactly concrete on like what I see myself doing in the future. I know like the impact I want to have, but the exact route I'm still exploring. Mhm.
Yeah, and there's different paths to get there, right? Like you could work in government, and it's almost like comparing NASA with what Elon Musk has done, right? It's like you have this big government-funded organization that took a long time to solve. They basically their thought process was let's get it all perfect and then build the rocket. Where you see Elon Musk has self-funded this thing, and how many rockets has he launched compared to NASA? And it's a completely different process, but he basically now gets paid by the government to carry out the missions instead. And, same goal, right? They want to get satellites in the air, that he wants to send civilization to Mars. So that might be his own personal interest, but maybe running your own company could be faster than working in government. So I think it's a lot of your experience at Stanford might help you find what you're more comfortable with.
Yes, for sure. And talking about companies, Stanford is very big on startup culture. So, yes, startups like most of them do fail, but I think even that experience of like that entrepreneurial spirit of, going, creating something and kind of like joining like-minded individuals and creating something that you could see have an impact in the future is a very exciting route that I'm definitely thinking about. And even what we were talking about earlier about like the inefficiencies that come with like government sponsored things, I definitely think that exploring like the private route, like the company route or the startup route is a very exciting approach that I'm excited to explore.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I could see you doing really well there. You've already had this experience starting your nonprofit, and at the end of the day, whether it's a nonprofit, a startup, a business, you're solving a problem, right? And the bigger, more revenue intensive businesses and such solve bigger problems, and it depends on just where you want to fit and such, but. If you have any interest in anything entrepreneurial, Mark and I are kind of serial entrepreneurs. We have a few small businesses ourselves. We have real estate that we own together, and we're kind of just business nerds. We might spend hours just sitting there talking about different ideas and such. So feel free if you have anything that you're looking for a sounding board on. Sounds like you have plenty of people, but you can add us two to your list as well.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I definitely like respect entrepreneurs because it is such a risky process. And, prior to Stanford, I was always like scared of risk and kind of, anti-startup culture just because I was very like, I like, also like given like my background with my parents, I think that I was very much wanting to pursue like a stable career path. But I think since being here, I find like the risk very exciting as well. So
Mm.
thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you can kind of layer it too. You can basically like I have a couple of friends that they both work pretty good stable jobs, but then they buy real estate on the side and they have several investment properties and they've owned other small businesses on the side. It's not their main thing, but you can kind of diversify yourself that way maybe before you make that big leap. If you make that big leap and you can't put food on the table or provide for your family, it's probably not the best most noble thing you can do, but while you're young and you have time on your side and you don't have a family there dependent on you, you can afford yourself to take a little bit more risk, right?
For sure, yeah. I definitely see myself kind of doing that dual path, maybe having like a more stable job and then definitely having the entrepreneurial like track on the side as well. I think that my nonprofit is going to be like a route in itself, like aside from all of those, like consistently something that I want to continue growing and, continue like having an impact with. But definitely I do want to kind of like dip my toes into like starting something like more private. Yeah, but we'll see. Yeah.
Well, it's sometimes we get inside our heads and you keep looking for the perfect thing to do and then you never get to it and then people spend their entire lives not doing anything, right? And it's sometimes you just gotta put yourself out there, done's better than perfect. Just put it out, try to ask someone to, if it's a for profit, get someone to give you their first dollar, and just see if you can get it out there. There's this saying that your minimum viable product, you should almost be embarrassed by it, just to get it out there and let the market tell you if it's good or not. And you take that feedback and then you keep adjusting and iterating and you end up someplace completely different than when you started, right? So it's um, there's no failing unless you stop. So I think that with your background and your interests, I mean, you've already proven the concept. This nonprofit, you've done some really impactful services for people there that you probably changed some lives, right? And so you got to feel really good about that. And you're all but 18 years old right now.
I am.
You're
Yes.
making us look bad.
Well, I just think that I think that even seeing a lot of other like youth change makers, like especially in high school, I would always look up to specific like youth change makers like Sophia Kiani. Like she was actually a student at Stanford. I This was even before I had like my eyes on Stanford. It was just like her and like what she's doing. Like specifically she focused on climate change and so like she's like the youngest like youth advisor to the UN like climate change initiative or commission. And it's like kind of seeing like how these like people that were, my age or even just slightly a few years older than me having such an impact definitely gave me like a confidence that I could possibly have an impact as well. And I definitely hope that, for like my sister and her friends that even like seeing through like what I'm doing that they hopefully like gain a confidence as well that if they have any interest, that it's definitely in their power to pursue it even like now. Like I feel like a lot of people not put it they don't, like, necessarily put it off, but, like, just envision themselves doing it in the future, but I think that people need to realize that, without, you can just, especially with, like, nonprofits or any projects, like, you can, like, raise the attention, you can raise the awareness, you can raise the funds. It's something that is very grassroots based, so that means I think that anyone can really start anything if they're, passionate about it.
Especially now, right? The amount of technology that's available, it can, these grassroots efforts, it's just purely time and effort that you can put in and reaching out to the right people at the right time and being consistent. You can do some pretty incredible things. You don't need to be, run a newspaper or own a TV station to reach people anymore. You can basically just stay on it. You have great levers and social media and email and FaceTime, all these different things that weren't really around, 25 years ago to have impact, in really one generation, a lot has changed. You don't have to have, a big media company behind you any longer.
For sure, it definitely, social media is such a big catalyst for change. I can't even encapsulate its power in being able to send communicate a message or gather people, for example, or kind of join similar like-minded people or people who are similar interested in the same things. Like there's a few communities in high school I was writing for this journal. It was called Girls in White Coats. And basically we researched and wrote about certain gender disparities within healthcare. So basically, that was all congregated through an online platform, through basically an Instagram. And we met on Zoom calls and all of those things. Like we've never met in person and we were all across the US. And that was only possible through technology and Instagram and social media. So I'm very grateful for that too.
That's awesome. We haven't done it for a little while, but it's called the Junto Club. It's based on what Benjamin Franklin did in the 1700s, where he, organized people in his community and they came up with the library and fire stations and all kinds of great ideas like that. We haven't done anything like that yet, Mark, so we have to probably come up with some better ideas. But we basically organize fellows and people a part of Morgan Franklin Foundation all around the country, and we'll talk about things like budgeting or goals or spend, just things. It's kind of the saying, like, you don't talk about religion, politics, and money with family, really. And so we try to create an environment where we have people who have all gone through our program to be a safe place where we can talk about best practices and ideas and tips and tricks that we can kind of share with each other, and just collectively get a group of people together that might not ever really get together in one place. So it's really cool that you've organically come across, niche groups of people like that with common interests. So I'll have to invite you for when we start doing some more of these Junto Club meetings again, because I think you could share a lot with our other fellows throughout the country.
Thank you so much. Yes, I definitely think that those safe spaces to be able to talk about taboo topics, like you said, it's not like dinner table topics that you should be talking about. I think that's so important. Even when I was talking about Citizen University, I think that specifically allowed me a space to be talking about very controversial and kind of heavy topics as well with people that wouldn't necessarily shut me down for my ideas or my background. So and that also gave me the opportunity to learn from others. I am very much invested in learning about other people's perspectives, because I understand everyone comes from different backgrounds and that may lead to different ideas and opinions based on things. So I think that having those safe spaces to kind of exchange advice or their stories can definitely help benefit everyone in the conversation. So I think those spaces are so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's you learn more from people too. I remember
Mhm.
it being said, I don't know if I read this or someone told it to me, but it was this saying, like, picture every person they have this golden nugget in their brain. And you have to keep talking to them and asking questions, learning about them to get that golden nugget. Like every person can teach you something and make you better. And it just takes you being open, asking questions and learning about them. Because a lot of people aren't. They kind of go about their business and they don't want to hear things that, might not agree with their personal viewpoints and such. So it's
Mhm.
good to be open and learning. And you're in the right place. I mean, people come from all over the world to go to Stanford, and you're talk about a melting pot of great minds all throughout the world. I mean, you're gonna picture where you'll be a few years from now after being shaped by that.
Yeah, I think that's one of like the greatest thing about Stanford really is like the community of people. Like I'll just be talking to a friend I have and then realize like this big app that they, have like on the market or something like that, or like this policy they pass. It's quite incredible, like the things they've accomplished because at the end of the day, they're like my friend, they're like, an 18-year-old, a normal teenager, but they also have like incredible passions and incredible skills that they've invested to have actual impact before and that they're going to continue to do. So I think that, like accessing that golden nugget has been something that I've been doing a lot of this first quarter at Stanford, and I'm very excited to like continue to do that too.
Well, it's good to have that spirit. I heard this story about Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart. He was notorious for this. He actually I think that one of the anecdotes, I think he got arrested because he was in, I think, a Sears or some other store, and he was in there measuring like the width of their aisles, and he was constantly trying to make Walmarts better. So he was in there, and I think there was this company out of Brazil. I might be mistaking the country, but they basically asked to meet with Sam Walton to, basically the intention was for them to pick his brain and learn about him. But when they came and met him, he spent the entire time asking them questions. And, even with him in a superior position, he constantly had that modesty and humility about him that he could learn something from other people and get better. And that was one of the big things I got to take away from him. So it's good to always keep yourself as the student. You're never done learning.
For sure, yeah. And humility is so important. I feel like anyone can learn anything from anyone. So like I feel like also like when you have humility, you also realize the importance of context when it comes to like what people can accomplish and all those things. So I think that my dad always impressed on me like the importance of being humble and humility. So like that's also something that I find very important.
Well, what a great role model with what your father did for you to really pave this path to get to this gets you where you're going right now. I'm interested also. We didn't ask you about. So I imagine that you had a few options for where you wanted to go to college. So you ended up at Stanford. Were there other ones that you were seriously considering that you had to narrow it down to before picking?
Yeah, so the college application process, I went into it not having exactly a dream school, but ever since like middle school, maybe even earlier, I like imagined myself. I really wanted into an institution with, like community that I can learn from, professors that have done great things in the world, very niche, amazing classes. So I definitely like was very ambitious on that term. So I applied restrictive early action. So it's like the early round, but it's not binding to Princeton. And I got into Princeton in December, and then I submitted my other applications. They were due in January. I decided to submit them because I was incredibly grateful and very committed. I thought that I was going to end up at Princeton, but I still wanted other options available. I was very like strategic in terms of my plan also when it came to financial aid, because I knew that if, for example, if I had another offer from a school and they offered more financial aid, then I could negotiate between the schools. So like I wanted to keep my options open. So I applied to nine other schools, and so basically I got into, I think I got into like, I didn't get into Harvard. So like that was the one school I didn't get into, but I did get into Vanderbilt. I got a full tuition scholarship. Then I got into UF, which is like our state school. I got like full ride to that school as well. Northwestern, I got into Johns Hopkins. I received a merit scholarship as well. Then I applied to Emory. I applied to, wait, let me think. Columbia, I got into Columbia. Um, Princeton, I already said. Yale, and then Harvard, I got waitlisted, and then the final one, Stanford. Yeah. So like those were the other schools, but it wasn't very much based on like growing up. Oh, I know some people had like dream schools growing up, but I just wanted to access, like the best financial aid, and also like the air like geographic area was very important to me in terms of like what opportunities would be available in the area, and then also how interdisciplinary the school was. So that was one of the things. So Columbia growing up, I didn't like have a dream school, but it was definitely a school that I had my eyes on growing up in New York and everything. But Columbia does, I would say it was a little bit more restrictive in terms of like how I could explore, and I'm someone that needs to explore in school, like my different like academic interests. So I think that Stanford definitely offered that, and there was just so many pros to Stanford that I ended up committing to Stanford for those reasons. But yeah.
Well, it sounds like you definitely weighed your options and you had a lot to choose from. But from what we know about you, it sounds like you made the right choice and made sure it was in line with your values. I imagine that the dining hall must have been a big part of it too. I'm sure you compared the eating at all these colleges. It's a pretty big detail as well.
The dining halls. Well, I was actually, I didn't really like look too much into it because I just like I felt like I feel like at these like big institutions they would have a lot of options maybe, but yeah, the food at Snifford's pretty good and they have like a lot of dining halls, so I am that is a pro for sure at Stanford.
Well, that's good. That
Yeah.
would be bad if you had all this great education, but the food was horrible and you wanted to leave.
Yeah.
Mark, I've been talking all this time. You got to have something that you wanted to ask, but I just kept talking.
Yeah, I did. You've mentioned a few times your siblings and I don't know if you have two sisters or a sister and a brother, but I was just curious if you're an older child and you're sort of, are you
Mhm.
like paving the way for them or what, or are you a younger child and you've learned from your siblings? I was just curious a little more about your siblings.
Yeah, I have a younger sister and a younger brother. So my sister is a freshman in high school right now, and then my brother's in he's in fifth grade right now. So like I definitely am like trying to help guide them in terms of like, you know, what high school classes to take, maybe what clubs they could be interested in, and kind of like being that helping hand because in high school, I had to like kind of research everything. Of course, my parents did not like do like experience the education system here in the US, so they, you know, they could not provide like personal experience advice. So I just would research everything online, you know, talk to upperclassmen and even like, you know, current college students that were like at institutions that I hope to hopefully attend. So like it was a lot of like research-based initiatives on my part, like starting very early on. I think it was like starting eighth grade that I was like researching like, you know, the different opportunities available and all that. But I think that with my sister, I'm specifically right now, like it is still ninth grade, so she's still starting out high school and, you know, exploring her passions and everything. But, you know, sending her like opportunities she should apply to, like maybe like specific classes she should take and all those things. But they have like I would say we're all very different in terms of like our passions as well, but it's definitely a great experience being an older sibling. And yeah, I'm very, you know, happy that I have two younger siblings to, you know, look after too as
Yeah, you're very. I'm sure you're a big inspiration for them. Your story is pretty incredible, and so kudos to you. Very impressive background and what you're trying to do.
Thank you. Well, that's something actually, because I feel like sometimes like especially when like after the college application process, like when we went like as a family to like, you know, like an event or something, everyone would be, you know, of course, congratulating, which I am very like grateful for. But also I just also want to make sure that my siblings know that it's just because I got into these schools doesn't mean like they're not, you know, it makes me like anyone better than anyone else. So I just always tell my siblings that, you know, success is not necessarily measured by like certain metrics, for example, like success can come in other ways as well. So that's also been something that has been very eye-opening as an older sibling as well. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really great feedback, and it really segues into, I mean, that the whole intention of this podcast, we want to, you know, inspire others, by hearing your story and the things that you've done, how you've approached it. I'd imagine that you would give similar advice to others that you might give to your younger siblings of how to go about their schoolwork and extracurricular activities. But if you could boil it down to, I don't know if you've thought of it like a formula for you had a swimming background, but then you had these in-school activities and out-school activities. based on your experience, where it's pretty fresh still in your brain of being a high school senior looking to get into colleges, what would you recommend to people who are, I mean, if they are pursuing higher education, how would you go about that process for, how you look on paper when you're applying?
So I think like one of the main pillars is always research. Always research, 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 research. Like you learn so much through like online resources, but also through other people's experiences as well. And kind of like, especially if you don't have like parents that you could like see like their trajectory paths in the US and kind of follow those steps. I think also like talking to other people like upperclassmen is very important. Then another thing I think is very important is always exploring. So like don't necessarily like cage yourself in a box. Like I know a lot of people like they go into even college or high school like thinking, "Oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to follow this, this and this." So, but I think that it's very important to always keep your mind open to different opportunities, maybe different interests. And then always like try to be friendly with people because you never know like when you guys might start something together or maybe like be helpful in different capacities as well. I think that friendship is so important and like throughout your life for so many different reasons as well. But at the end of the day, I think it's just very important to also realize, like I was talking about earlier, like realize your own like power and your own potential and having impact and kind of not being like scared about like your opinions, but also while not being scared about your opinions, always being open to changing your opinions as well. I think that's also something very important. Um, being open about different opportunities and kind of putting yourself out there to different experiences. I've been doing that a lot at Stanford. Since I'm undecided and I don't exactly know what like maybe pre-professional track I might take, just dipping my toes into everything. I think that's so important and just trying everything until you find something that you're really passionate about and just, honing in on that and, reaching out to people and finding ways, a niche problem that you can have an impact in, is the best way, in my opinion, of having like sustainable impact in the future. But yeah.
Wow, what great advice. Thank you very much. I think anyone looking to pursue higher education or even pursuing careers, that's advice that's great for anybody. So thank you very much for that. And with that said, we've had you. I feel like we just started talking. We're almost at an hour here. So is there anything else that you think you'd like to share that anyone either pursuing any of our courses or pursuing a change in their life that you'd like to share that you think might inspire them?
Definitely support MFF. It's an incredible program. I love the initiative of financial independence. I think that that is such an important thing in our world today. And, always be open to learning and learning new ways to create assets for yourself, whether it be like education, your network of people, or financial literacy. Always, and also like give back to your community as well and kind of give back to bridging opportunities. To access those sort of things that also empowered you as well. So that's generally, yeah, what I have to say.
Oh, that's great. Great advice. And I did not put her up to that, by the way. That was natural. Thank you for
Very well
mentioning that. I
said.
think No, I think that's it was great, and really when we started our scholarship, even for those who didn't win the scholarship, we wanted to have positive impact by helping them with their financial literacy by going through our program. So we intentionally wanted it to be short and quick information that has positive impact. So I hope that you're seeing it now as you're becoming your own adult now, right? And you're going to be making decisions now that affect your livelihood a few years from now with any debts you might take on and trying to think about the end in mind with what careers you might choose to pursue of how that's going to set you up. So I think you've done a really great job in terms of thinking of things like scholarships and financial aid as you're approaching college. And I think that wherever you want to go, you'll be able to pursue it and have success there. So I think we definitely have to stay in touch. We're probably going to have a follow-up podcast with you as you go down this path, because I'm sure the next time we talk to you, you'll have started all kinds of other organizations, and you'll probably have met with the president. And I'm looking forward to hear more about your story.
All right, thank you so much for this, for sure. I think that being like college is such a big investment, definitely very scary, and it's definitely something that am very, very aware of. And, financial independence and literacy is so important, especially with like the way education institutions are structured in the US. So that is definitely very, very helpful, the fellow program. Yes, for sure.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we just want people to, we want people to have a life that they actually like to live, not be working a job you hate because you bought a bunch of stuff you don't need and just, slogging through life. So if you make some good decisions outside of what you earn, you can, you can live the kind of life that's in line with your values. So
Mhm.
that's great to hear. So, well, hey, thanks again so much for joining us today. We're so happy to finally meet with you, and I'm glad that we could help support you on your mission here, your story, how you're going through school, and I'm glad we could support you at Stanford.
Thank you so much for the support.
Of course. All right, well, take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.